bad girl and your friend's bad too. Oh, you got the swag, saucy drippin' swag goo.
Is that the competition is getting more intense. So last year, 151,000 people took the LSAT, and that's the highest number it's ever been. This is really important for you because the test is relatively scored. So the more people that take it, it goes both ways, right? So the more people that take it, maybe the better chance you're in to do well, right? Because if you're really prepared, then there are all those like people below you, right? But if you're not prepared, then it's just that many more people that can hurt your score because they are prepared. So the fact that it's a bigger number isn't necessarily hurtful to you. It just means that if you prepare, you're getting a bigger payoff, and if you don't prepare, you're sort of taking a bigger hit. Does that make sense? Just to clarify what I'm saying for those of you that haven't taken the LSAT yet, the high score is set by the person who does the best, right? So it's not just an absolute score. It's not like you get 100% of the questions right and you get a 180, which is the highest score available. It's that the person who does the best gets a 180. Very few people do. So keep that in mind, because when you prep for the LSAT, you're actually doing something that most students aren't. Only about 18% of the people that take the test prep in some form. So, and there's obviously a trend, and you'd be surprised at the amount of people that wake up and are like, I'm going to go to law school. How to be an important person in this application process, you really need to know the application timeline. Now, juniors especially, I'm talking to you, and sophomores start thinking about this too, right? So, in June, for those of you that are juniors right now, the first test comes. This is the test that I recommend if you're a junior, because you have so much time that if this doesn't go so hot for you, to take the October and still be able to get into the early decision application period, which runs from September to the middle of November, right? As soon as you take your LSAT, you have about 5 weeks for those of you taking it. It used to be 6. 4. Oh, it's 4 now.
4 to 5 weeks.
Well, it's just better. Okay, 4 weeks, right? So, if you take, like, the test this round is October 1st. If you take the October 1st test, you get your application, or you get your scores back at the very beginning of November, and then you have 2 weeks to send in your application, right? So you can still get into the early decision period if you take that October test. Which means that if you're a junior, you want in that June test, because it's also very common for people to take it twice. And you don't want to put all your ponies on the October test and then need to take it again and only have 2 months to prep and miss that early admission date, okay? For those of you that maybe are seniors and didn't do this, that's okay, right? There are other little tricks to get around this too. But this is the ideal. Admissions period, the rolling admissions starts from October until usually the 1st of February. 2/3 of law schools drop their application timeline on the 1st of February, which makes that February test date sort of weird, right? I don't really know what you're supposed to do with it, to be honest. I think a lot of people do it a year ahead. So if you are a junior now and you want to take the February test, that's absolutely fine. You're just over-preparing, which there's nothing wrong with that, okay? Note that this admission period is rolling, and so the earlier you apply, the better. Now that being said, one of the questions, I'm having a hard time telling when you guys are waving bugs off when you're raising your hand, so I'm just going to keep talking unless you're like, ugh. Okay, so one thing to know about this is, I get a lot of questions about, well, I don't want to wait to take the December test because I want to get my application in as soon as possible. Doesn't that matter? And so what I will tell you is that, let's say you apply in October, right, the beginning of rolling admissions, with a 148 on your LSAT, right? Applying with a 148 in October is probably better than applying in, say, January with a 151, because the difference in the score isn't that significant, right? But applying in January with a 167 versus applying in October with a 150, dramatically different, right? So if you think that you can improve your LSAT score significantly, then it's worth the wait. Okay? Just sort of throwing it.
What?
Is one of the factors into your application, but it's not the only. There are actually 3 factors. They call it the trifecta system, which is actually important for your application. There are 2 quantitative factors, your LSAT score and your GPA, right? And then the other factor is all the qualitative stuff, which is your personal statement, your resume, your letters of rec, your extracurricular activities, possible addendums, and interviews. I'm not going to talk too much about interviews because the only school that does them is Northwestern in Chicago. Okay. But we'll talk a little bit about those. Now, one thing to note about the quantitative is that they pop out a score for you. You actually get a score from 1 through 100. And the way that they figure it is 60% of the weight goes to your LSAT score, 40% of the weight goes to your GPA. All right? Now, for your GPA, because this university doesn't weight A pluses anything, right? A pluses is a 4.0, just like A's are a 4.0. But other universities do weight, like I think it's 4.33 for A pluses at other universities. Your LSAT, or your LSAC, LSAC is the company that you apply through, and LSAT is the test. Your LSAC will actually give you a new GPA. If you've had any A pluses at all on your resume, your GPA gets bumped. So you can figure that out. And this is going to be important, especially freshmen, sophomores, juniors. That A plus matters if you want to go to law school. A lot of students don't care about it at this university because why make the effort for the extra couple percent when it doesn't affect your GPA? It does for your application. All right, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so now there are a couple things that you have a lot of control over. The LSAT's the thing you have the most control over. You can go from a 132, which isn't so hot, to a 167 in a matter of 3-4 months. I've worked with about 400 students at this point, and so I know that you can do that, right? And that's why we say it's not only the most important factor, but it's the factor that you can change the quickest. While your GPA, I mean, you guys know, right? That GPA is impossible to change after a little while. It just goes up like 0.02 every semester. It's nightmarish, right? So the GPA is sort of like on the bottom of the spectrum. It's really hard to change, although you can impact your GPA. And freshmen, sophomores, just keep it strong from the beginning. We'll talk a little bit more about the GPA in a minute. But your LSAT score is like the thing that you can take control of. Man, I can't even stress. I've seen students go from 130s to 178s with me. A couple things about your resume. You do want to have legal experience on it if you can. What I mean by legal experience is just volunteer somewhere, right? Volunteer at a law office. This makes a big difference. Now, the one thing that you shouldn't do if you are a senior is if you haven't done it yet, don't do it in the last couple weeks. Because if you've had that resume, it's obvious. Just to be honest about that, right? However, if you haven't done it and you're a junior or senior, there are ways to get involved in the legal community without just going somewhere, working there for 2 weeks, and throwing it on your resume. One way to do this is sign up for some law journal, right? LexisNexis is one, World Law is another, and these are all things if you're curious about, you can contact me. Sign up for a law journal, read a couple articles about a local, not local, but current event, and then write about it, right? Personal statement, sneak it in. So the personal statement's the way to sneak things in when you don't have it on your resume. So do have legal experience if you have the time, but don't fake it. Don't fake anything. Do not volunteer at the Humane Society at the Cunningham home the last 2 weeks before you apply, right? Our jobs in the admissions office, I can speak for us here, is just to spot the bullshit, right? Okay, all right. Now the other thing that's important, and this is a mistake that a lot of people make, you want to be considered a passionate person, right? And if you are president of 20 different clubs, they're asking, what are you doing in all these places? If you commit yourself to too many organizations, you don't look passionate, you look scattered, right? So it's better for you to be like the president of one organization and then in your resume be able to show all these things that you've done with that club, right? Then be like in the cooking club and, I don't know, like in the I Love the Simpsons club and in the skydiving club. This doesn't mean anything. It also doesn't give you a character. These people don't get to meet you. They have to get to know you via your resume and personal statement. And if they see that you're involved in this organization and you're also involved in some sort of like international rights program and United Students Against Sweatshop Labor, then you're telling a story via your clubs, right? So keep it themed. Very important. So don't be scattered. And then your resume is more than your work experience. Especially those of you that don't have a resume. I know that you'll have a workshop, so I'm not going to talk about this too much. But you should have volunteer experience on there. If you ever go to a conference or organization, this Clio. This Clio thing would be perfect for that, right? Put it on your resume. Your work experience should be like 15% of that resume, and not very much of your transcript or your education either, because they're going to have a transcript. Okay? So that's the idea. Because your personal statement shouldn't just be a list of your accomplishments, but you want them to have a list of your accomplishments, it goes on the resume.